connecting Palestine and Western Sahara. As we wait a few minutes for latecomers, I'll invite you to write in the chat box, of course, only if you choose to, your name, where you're from, and the name of someone who inspires you today. And let me take a look at the chat box. So anybody want to start? We have Steve. Welcome, Steve. Hi, Tom. Hello, Judith from Anderson, South Carolina. Naeem Atit inspires you. Excellent. And Fenny from the Netherlands. Welcome. We've got Ronnie from New York. Welcome. We have Clarissa. Welcome. Dina. Hey, Dina. Mubarak inspires you. We have Kayla. My gosh, everybody's joining. That's great. Susan, welcome. Lynn, Janet. Dill, is it Dill Henderson?
Yes, you're right.
Right, and Dr. Zunes inspires you. That's wonderful. We have Pedro. Thank you for joining. Ken, welcome. And we have some people from Treaty 6 territory in Saskatchewan. Welcome. Ellen, Jean Sharp, inspired by your son. That's excellent. We have Joe and we have Margie. Welcome. As a reminder to everyone, this is being recorded. It's going to be it's a public event. We have Jan from the Netherlands. Welcome. And we have Fahad from Atlanta, inspired by Jonathan Kuttab. So in about 20 seconds, we will unmute everyone. We'll ask you to say hello from all over the world at the same time. And then afterwards, we'll ask you to mute yourselves. So our tech master, Jules, will unmute everyone in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Unmute.
Oh. Hello, everybody. Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Hi, everybody. Hello. Hi.
Good morning. Good morning.
Bonjour.
All right. So, Jules, if we're ready to mute and get started. Again, welcome to our webinar today titled Resistance to Annexation, Palestine and Western Sahara. This event is sponsored by Nonviolence International. My name is Rafif Shwejati, and I'm a Syrian-American feminist, activist, and supporter of nonviolent resistance. I'm also a member of Nonviolence International's board of directors. Nonviolence International is a backbone organization for the global nonviolent movement. We provide fiscal sponsorship and training, and we spread knowledge and transformative stories of dynamic, emerging nonviolent movements that give us hope in difficult times. In short, we are reshaping what we view as possible. Our webinar series is called We Are All Part of One Another, a line from the feminist and nonviolent activist Barbara Deming. We are all part of one another is reflective of an ancient truth that lies at the heart of all world religions and scientific understanding of all humans. We are intensely social and interdependent creatures. The purpose of this webinar is to educate the world about resistance to annexation. This is a topic that's close to my heart as someone of Syrian heritage. Israel's annexation of the Golan Heights through military force has done grievous harm to the people of the Golan and has set a precedent for other nations to act similarly, often with impunity and in violation of international law. We must resist annexations everywhere. Today, our focus is on resistance to the annexations of Palestine and Western Sahara and the need for a united global response to end these occupations. And now it is my great honor and pleasure to introduce our host, Mubarak Awad, founder and president of Nonviolence International. Mubarak is also a Palestinian leader of the First Intifada and a supporter of the Sahrawi people's desire for self-determination. Mubarak, I know our participants are eager to hear from you and our esteemed panelists, so the floor is all yours. Thank you.
شكرا وأهلا وسهلا للجميع. Thank you. And we are happy that you are over here on this topic. I have been several times in Morocco and in Western Sahara. And I went also another few times with Jonathan Kuttab to do some training there. And the Morocco's government were upset with me, and that is all right. But we continue to have support Western Sahara. I want to tell you about a burst. If we have a balloon and you put air on it and continue putting air in it, it will burst. And politics is like that. And if we look at the British, the rule in Ireland and in India, they burst. And Ireland and India became independence. But for the Western Sahara also, we have to understand what happened in Algeria. France thought, and everybody thought for so many years, that Algeria is part of France. And they have a concept of rebelling against the French in Algeria. And many people died. And the French were able to put down the revolution in Algeria. But at the end, even they won to get rid of the rebels, but Algeria became free and independence. So the balloon, as much as they tried to destroy the ability of resisting, the ability of freedom for people, it busted, it burst. So there is none. And we have many balloons. We have the Soviet Union balloons busted. We have so many other ideas is busted. And many times we have to start thinking what the US is doing in Western Sahara, or especially with Trump. He turned his back on Western Sahara. He turned his back on the Golan Heights. He turned his back on Jerusalem, on the Palestinian. That doesn't mean he have the power to say Western Sahara belong to Morocco. He doesn't have that. But he himself now burst. Too much air, too much hot air, and it's gone. So we are here trying to explain how we can help, how we can make and learn from Western Sahara people, from the Golan Heights people who are resisting, as well as to tell our experience as Palestinians, that one day the Israeli will burst because of their ego, and the Moroccan will burst, and also the Syrian will get the Golan Heights. So all those things are coming in the future, and we have to be patient, but we have to look at the individual advocacy. It's so much important, and the group concept to work together to make that burst faster. I encourage people to join the 90 minutes because of the importance of the topic. The rich panel and global experience that need to be shared. The webinar is recorded, and you could see it later on our website and on our YouTube channel. We have a panelist, and they are so much experience. We have people, we have a discussion, we will have a question and answers, and later on we have announcement when we trying to close, and we try to hear from anybody and everybody on that, and we welcome your support as well as cooperation with us and your ideas about what's Western Sahara is now in a most difficult situation, as well as what we have to do as individuals from different countries, that we want to show them that we support them. That becomes an important. We are holding the conversation less than a few months from a resumption in war between Western Sahara and Morocco, as well as the recognition of the United States of Israel and Moroccan occupation of neighboring lands. We cease to support global adherence to international law and support nonviolence boycott, divestment, sanction. So one of the things that I like to push for the Sahrawis is how we work on the BDS. And the Sahrawis, they don't need to call it BDS. They could call it DBS or whatever it is. So don't take our BDS from the Palestinians. And we have to have the whole world start boycotting Morocco or any of the Moroccans' businesses that affect the lives of the Sahrawi people. So that one part that we have to be very much to do action, as well as to do ideas that can help each other. Let me now introduce our panelists. Each will speak for 5 minutes in the order I introduce them. After they all speak, there will be time for active participation between the participants. The first I have on my list is Jonathan Kuttab. He will share the Palestinian experience of annexation and occupation and the international law. Salka Marco, Sahrawi activist, co-founder of Karama, Sahara Org, United States. And we have Sultana Kaya and Kamal Lafhisi, Moroccan human rights defender. And the last but not in the order, he's one of the best American activists who have been supporting Western Sahara, is Stephen Zunes. You will have on the chat their bibliography, and thank you all. I invite all of you to join me in a round of a silent applause for the rich and thought-provoking presentation. So you could clap your hand in the air or raise your hands and shake your hands so that you will give those speakers a kind of welcoming. Then we'll have question and answer. And Jonathan, please.
Thank you very much, Mubarak. I would like to say that as a Palestinian, sometimes I feel
we have the unenviable position of being sort of the globe setters, sort of the example of many of the violations of human rights and of international law throughout the world. I'd like to think that we also have something good to inspire other people when it comes to violations of human rights and resisting these matters. You see, at the very heart of the whole movement of solidarity is the principle of universality, that for the world to actually exist in relative harmony and peace, we need to have a set of principles that apply across the board to friend and foe alike. So that whether you like or you don't like one party or the other, you need to maintain certain principles to maintain world peace. And one of the bedrock principles of international law is that you cannot annex somebody else's property by force. This principle has been largely accepted as normative, as basic throughout the world. And Palestinians were one of the first to really suffer from violating this principle openly. Yes, there were probably two other examples. The Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, even though they had some historical basis for it, the Ukrainian situation with Russia, but it was Israel which basically started annexing territories, starting with East Jerusalem, the Golan Heights, and now other parts of the West Bank, sometimes openly and sometimes in a subtle way. Now, in the Palestinian experience, as in annexations everywhere, annexation doesn't just occur by itself. It is not just a violation of international law that invites fighting between countries. It usually also includes moving settlers into the occupied territories and creating havoc. It involves controlling a local population by denying them their rights, by collective punishments, by torture, imprisonment, demolition of property, restrictions on freedoms of movement and of gathering, and a denial of the basic right of self-determination. This is the case for Palestine. It is also the case for Western Sahara. And we cannot claim to support Palestinians or Sahrawis or international law or human rights unless we are willing to apply these principles across the board to friend and foe alike. The second important point that I want to make is that we at Nonviolence International realize that even though it is legitimate under international law to use armed resistance to fight for one's freedom and to resist occupation and annexation, that it is usually not a good idea, that it is much better to find non-violent methods to resist it, and it's much easier to get global international support for usually the weak, occupied, annexed people who are suffering from human rights. So we urge and we develop and we train and we practice methods of nonviolent resistance, from boycotts to divestments to sanctions to acts of solidarity to public shaming to picketing and generally boycotting the powerful who are exercising these violations of human rights. I will stop now because I think my 5 minutes are up, but there is much that we can share as Palestinians in solidarity and in support for Western Sahara people as well. Thank you, Mubarak.
We are asking Salka if she's around.
Hello, can you hear me?
أهلا وسهلا فيك.
أهلا وسهلا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. I am just putting my alarm so I can stop myself. Thank you for having us on this seminar. It's absolutely, it's a must, and we need to be more, in public platforms such as this. As you have seen in my biography, was a Sahrawi woman in the United States, and if I start with a mic, I will be speaking all day. So excuse me for that. I do have hopefully just announcement for we are hoping to reach Sultana Khaya in a couple of minutes. So she will be speaking to us live from the occupied territory of Western Sahara in Bujadur or Bukadur. Also, we're hoping that we do have a video in case her connection is cut off purposely, as she is now presently under house arrest and under a lot of intimidation by the Moroccan police. I would like to just speak briefly about the methods that maintain the Sahrawi cause nonviolent struggle for so many years. It's not the nature alone, which is people would say, the Sahrawis are, the naturally are peaceful, etc. There is no such. But I think the educational and the awareness of the consequences of being otherwise is the reason that the Sahrawi maintained non-violent struggle to this day. These Sahrawi people, again, we have used so many limited things that are, or the Sahrawis under the occupation have used many methods that are available to them under the occupation of Moroccan occupation. One of the basic, and I do have pictures, I'm hoping to send them to Michael Beer so he can distribute them if I may. It's pictures about the how the traditional Sahrawi attire became as a resistance message. Those are the methods that we do believe, and I think I am sorry to interrupt also, I do have Sultana Khaya on live. The only way I can do is to put her toward the camera so I can, and I have her on the speaker. So if I can do the probably simultaneous interpreting, if that's okay with you. Can you hear سلطانة سامعتينا؟ وني بك أو سلطانة رانك مباشرة معاهم في الكونفرنس، تفضلي.
في البداية نشكرهم ونوجه الشكر لأي مدافع عن الحق وأي مدافع عن الكرامة لأجل الكفاح السلمي. يعني نحن كصحراويين نعانوا من ذا الاحتلال تقريبا.
I would like to thank everyone for having us and also giving us the opportunity to express our non-violent struggle, the Sahrawi struggle for non-violence.
نتكلم معاكم من باب المنزل اللي يعني عن احنا دفعنا ضغط فيه 113 يوم من الحصار والمنع، يعني كذا ضحيات راكم تشوفوا. هذه يعني القوات اللي محاصرتنا من كل اتجاه، مانعه منا الصحراويين من يشوا ذا المنزل اللي نحن يعني ردوا ذا المنزل الى سكن عسكري، ردوه الى السجن. يعني هم بالصفه
I am speaking right here from the front of my home. The one is currently under extreme control, extreme surveillance, and the presence of the military. It's they are turning this my home and this region to a literally military station or some of that sort. You can see them. They are turning this place to a prison as well.
كأمريكيين يعني معاكم في المشهد الأليم اللي هو سعود للمناسبة اللي هي كانت 8 مارس عيد المرأة. يعني احنا كنا تحت الحصار، لأنه هنا فيها فائدة السنة كنا نعذبه. كانت بنت اختي مشلوله اللي هي مسات الى ضريك حاله، كانت يعني من 10 صبايع نحن هون فيها بابنا مفتوح حياتنا كامله. نحن كان نتكلم معك ضريك وتشوفوهم يعني راهم يتخزنوا عن التصوير ويتخزنوا عن الكاميرا اللي يعني عنهم يبينوا للعالم
Also during as we were celebrating the 8th of March, the International Women's Day, that we were right here on this sidewalk, tortured and beaten and humiliated. Even in our home, that we were forced to be completely locked in such a place. Here you can see my niece that was beaten to the point that she's almost like paralyzed for the past 10 hours or so, that she's unable to walk. You can see them right here. They're right here next to me. You can see that they're hiding because they can see the filming.
نتكلم معكم يعني أنا تشوف صار بالضبط يعني في 4 أشهر يعني أنا كانت محاولة تصفيتي ولا محاولة تقع عيني اللي بالعين معروف عنها مفقوعة في إحدى المظاهرات من طرف الاحتلال المغربية، واللي يعني أنا كانت محاولتي ضرب اللي رأى يعني هذا الدقدق بدون علاج بدون طب. نحن يعني حالتنا اللي هي كصحراويين نعيشوا تحت وطية الاحتلال المغربي.
As you can see also that for the past few months, so 3 months or so, that have been under such harassment. You can see that my other eye, the one that was not already gouged, the other one also beaten right on my face right here. I suffered from broken areas right here, and without any treatment, without any medical attention. We are the Sahrawis living here under this occupation, unbearable.
اليوم عنه صليب احمر محايد، صليب احمر منحاز الى الاحتلال المغربي اللي يعني عنه هو جاي صاير لعامل ما هو مبطوط، وذوك اللي هم يبطوا ويعاقبوا هو اللي يعني هو اليوم يستقبل، ونحن كضحايا هنا في مدنيين يعني لا شفنا اي شيء. يعني هذا هو اللي وقع الاحتلال المغربي. يعني البارح كان في طريقه يعني نحن شفناه مبديات وجاب يعني جميع اشكالهم وسالوا رعاهم اذا ضركت اياها رعاهم صور. انا نقول لك كل الوطن او الشهاده، نقول لك عشت الجبهه الشعبيه التحرير الساقط.
And here you can see this is not the interpreting, but this I'm trying to explain that they are coming closer to her, like they have been doing, so they are trying to they are trying to actually intimidate her, that we have seen that before. They were filming, but when they saw that she is turning to them, they are hiding it. And this is what Sultana goes through. So I don't want her to be in more danger. I don't Sultana وني بك لا بغيت باش ما يعود ياسر من الخطوره وذا، لا باش ما نطولوا على مولي رجلي. تفضلي. ها وني بك.
انا راني نعكسكم الطريقه يعني اللي هما يتعاملوا، الطريقه اللي هما قافلين بيها، والطريقه اللي يعني معاملين مع نحناتي كنساء والله مع الصحراويين كلهم عن نحن طالبين منهم كهم مدافعين ومكافحين عن الكفاح السلمي، عن نحن لا شيء نحملوه ما هو ذا العلم الوطني والله الدم اللي يمشي فينا والقناعات اللي علينا عنا على حق. يعني واسمحوا لي بدون اطاله نطالبوا بحمايه مدنيه، نطالبوا كل الامريكيين، ونطالبوا اداره بايدن اللي هي معروفه ما هو حقوق انسان يعني عنهم للنقد للشعب اللي هو يعاني من ويلات الاحتلال.
Also that I do know, and I forgive me for having taken so much of your time, but I would like to just to show you, and that's the reason why I was trying to do this, to show you how we are been dealing with all this for quite some time. I do ask the American people, the people everywhere, to know and to see this. We are looking, or we are asking for a protection of the civil society, the civilians in the Western Sahara. We want, and what I would like to deliver to the President Biden of the United States, knowing that he has a good history of human rights support. وني بك سلطانة، شكرا جزيلا باش ما نطول عليهم حتى أنا. مرحبتي بك، جزاك الله خير، كل وطن والشهادة. مرحب. Thank you very much. I am sorry, guys. I think I run my time, and I apologize for that. Thank you very much, and I shall leave the floor for you. Thank you.
شكرا جزيلا، وإحنا بنقدر صمودكم في الداخل وفي الخارج، وبدنا نقول إنه إحنا معكم في كل هذا النضال، خاصة النساء في اللي شفنا إنه دائما هو قوة كبيرة في الصراع بين مراكش والعيون. نحن فخورين كتير فيكم.
English.
I just tell them that how much we appreciate the women, the strength of the women of the Sahrawis, especially in Al-Ayun and other places, that they really are in front of the struggle, and they continue that struggle with all the difficulties and all the harassment. As women, we are very proud of them. And we as Palestinians and as Syrians, we really have to learn so much from them, because they are very, very much in front of all the actions that need, and we want to support them in any way we can. شكرا كتير يا سالكا. معلش أخذت وقت منك، ولكن إن شاء الله الناس بيسألوك أسئلة. Hopefully that you'll have more questions from other people so that you could talk to us again. أنا هلا بدي أنادي كمال من Moroccan human rights defender. Kamal, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah.
أهلا بك.
أهلا بك ومرحبا بك، وشرف كبير أن نكون شاركك في لقائك هذا. So I thank everyone, and I thank the Nonviolent International for this invitation, and it's great honor to be among such great names. I will put the stopwatch too, so I won't go beyond like 5 minutes. Though it's very hard to ask someone to talk about the sufferance of a Palestinian people and the Sahrawi people in 5 minutes. It's almost impossible. I mean, but I'll try to do the best as I can. My friends know that I'm very talkative, so please stop me if I don't stop myself within 5 minutes. So my name is Kamal al-Fahsi. Actually, it's pronounced al-Fahsi in the Arabic language, or Moroccan too, and it's called al-Fahsi. You can call me al-Fahsi in English. I will start. One thing is I, as a kid, I was raised to believe in the cause of the Palestinian cause, of course. I also adopted the peaceful way to solve that issue, because it's a very complicated issue. People, unfortunately, we grew up understanding that only from a religious point of view, which is not the correct point of view, to my opinion, of course, with all respect due. But I will start with a say that I grew up as a student when I was young, and as a student I believed in it, and it was said by the great George Habash, that is known to everyone with his struggle. And he said that actually the best thing that Arab nations and people who support the Palestinian cause can do to promote the cause of Palestine is to bring down their reactionary regimes. And based on me as a Moroccan who believes that our regime is one of the most reactionary regimes in the region, I took an oath to promote that exact thing. And this is why I support actually the Sahrawi cause, and as I supported and I will always support the Palestinian cause. I want to just shed the light on the background because I love history, and I always use history to raise my cases. It's during the 70s, actually, the Sahrawi resistance to the Spanish colonization grew and escalated, while the Moroccan regime was really doing nothing to even liberate the Moroccan territory that is not liberated. And this is what's common between us as Moroccan and the people of the Western Sahara. Spain illegally decided to transfer that administrative power to the Moroccan and to the Mauritanian in 1975, and then they did it in 1976. 1979, the UN General Assembly affirmatively described the Moroccan presence in the Western Sahara to be an occupation. This is, people should understand that that the legitimacy of the Moroccan claim, I would say the Moroccan claim has no legitimacy in it because there is no history that supports this annexation of the territory of the Sahrawi, and they cannot raise their cases. And the problem is that the Moroccan people have been kept in the dark, because you have to understand that we are also, I consider that Morocco, the rest of Morocco is occupied. Why I say Morocco is occupied? Because in the same way, when the resistance escalated in Morocco in the 50s and in the 1951, 1952, 1953, the Moroccan regime, the same Moroccan regime, maybe a different king, but it's the same mentality, is the same structure, is the same regime. They get involved in what's called interdependence with the French regime through the NATO, and it was supported by the British. It was supported by the alliance then. And so what we inherited the Moroccan regime from the colonization, and we have a treaty called A-Liban, or we call it Ex-Liban in Moroccan and in Arabic. Is a city in France where it was held a treaty. It was held in 1955 first, and then declared in 1956, and that was our independence. And it is not independence. It's written in that document that it is an interdependence, which means the French left a regime that would occupy the land of Morocco and would administrate or manage Morocco for them. So I don't consider that Morocco is free. The same way I consider that Western Sahara is being occupied by the same system and the same regime that is occupying the rest of Morocco. From there, I call this that the Moroccan people should be unified with the Sahrawi people to fight this regime that has brought just destruction, brought fear, brought violations of human rights, brought destruction to the whole region. And I'm not talking only about Morocco, I'm talking about the whole region. I'm talking about North Africa, North Africa, and the Middle East. This is a regime that has promoted colonization and one of the worst forms of it. So the annexation of the Western Sahara, for me, is no different from the annexation and the illegal settlements that the Israeli government has been practicing in Palestine. And the problem is, even like it was funny, I was talking to a friend of mine who was an American, and I told him about this story, and he said, this reminds me like the squatting regulation in the United States. And I told him, I mean, it's not even squatting regulation, because at least in squatting, you have to have certain years taking care of that land, taking care of that property before you can claim it yours. But these people have brought nothing but destruction and violence to that region, and they want to annex it.
Yeah,
from this, I would say that actually, my belief actually in self-determination. I grew up in a school, and when I was a student, as the generations before me, since the 60s and the 70s, we have people who has been detained, people who has been assassinated by this regime, just because they declared at certain time their support to the Palestinian cause. Though this regime acts like it is a regime that is in support of the Palestinian cause, but actually it is completely the opposite, and we've seen it happening actually with this unlawful decision of former President Trump to just recognize the sovereignty of the Moroccan regime over the Western Sahara. And they stated that it was conducted in exchange of Morocco making a peaceful act, like they call it, with the Israeli government, which was not correct actually, because there was just a cover, because the relationship between the regime, the Moroccan regime, and the Israeli government has never ceased. It was just conducted in an undeclared way.
Thank you, Kamal. Kamal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is great. We appreciate that. I gave you 2 minutes extra, and I know that you could speak more hours on this. We could see how you feel so strongly on that. I have to tell the audience some special thing about the Moroccans. And one time the Moroccan police want to come to a town in Morocco, and the Moroccan people decided that they will evict everybody in town, men, women, children, everybody. They took tents and they left the town empty completely, and they put the tents in the desert. When the Moroccan soldiers came, they find an empty city. And this is a beautiful of a nonviolent act that have been always on my mind, how strong are the Moroccans when they want to resist. Thank you so much, Kamal. I now want to introduce to you Stephen Zunes. We have been together in many places, and especially we started to go together many, many years ago with a friend of mine that I miss so much, Scott Kennedy. And then we have been in Egypt working with a lot of Egyptians before the uprising there. And he will discuss the similarities between Western Sahara and Palestine and the US recognition of annexation. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you very much for putting this together. I mean, for years, I've been wanting more and more people to see the connection between these two struggles. And I'm not surprised that Nonviolence International is leading the way in bringing this forward. As was noted, Trump's recognition of Morocco's illegal annexation of Western Sahara was not the first illegal annexation he recognized. He would recognize Israel's illegal annexation of the Golan, which in 1981, the United Nations Security Council, interestingly with the support of the Reagan administration, declared null and void. Trump also recognized the illegal Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank as part of Israel, and he implied all of Greater East Jerusalem were part of Israel as well. Biden has not rescinded any of these. Now, I think it's important to note that in both the Israeli and Moroccan occupations, the United States for years has largely supported the occupying powers. But until Trump was in office, previous administrations had recognized the dangerous legal precedent of formal recognition. Trump, in both Golan in Palestine and in Western Sahara, made official what was essentially US policy anyway. I mean, for decades, both Republican and Democratic administrations have insisted that neither Morocco nor Israel was obligated to withdraw their occupying forces, instead allowing the occupying powers to engage in an endless peace process with those under occupation who have little leverage to change the situation, change the equation, thereby allowing both occupiers to continue colonizing their occupied territories and consolidating their control. As a result, Trump's insistent that the Golan Heights and parts of the West Bank are now part of Israel, and that Western Sahara is now part of Morocco, simply codifies what the occupying powers had been saying for decades, knowing that they would not receive any pressure, any real pressure from the United States to end their illegal occupations. However, such occupations are still illegal, whether the United States acknowledges it or not. I mean, Morocco's occupation is worse because the United States is recognized the annexation of an entire country, a country that's been recognized by no less than 80 other nations, is a full member state of the African Union. In other words, Trump has recognized the takeover of one recognized African state by another. And Biden has not rescinded this announcement either. You could do with a stroke of a pen. Just a few days ago, people in the U.S. Embassy went down to Dakhla in occupied Western Sahara to help lead a young Moroccan leaders conference. Trying to get the part of the project to assimilate young adult Sahrawis, thinking they're Moroccan, not Sahrawi. The U.S. is opening a consulate there. I mean, but again, and Biden is doing nothing to challenge this. In many ways, this isn't surprising. I mean, Biden has had a very poor record on human rights and international law, despite what one speaker noted earlier. He was a big supporter of the U.S. invasion of Iraq, a clear violation of the UN Charter. He's repeatedly attacked the United Nations and its agencies, including the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court. But this is all very dangerous because, remember, World War II was fought on the principle that countries could not invade and annex neighboring countries. The UN Charter, and it's a fundamental part of the UN Charter, is that countries cannot expand their territory by force. The United States and much of the Western world has put sanctions on Russia because of their illegal annexation of Crimea. The US led a war against Iraq because of their illegal annexation of Kuwait. But so what the United States is essentially saying now is that an Arab country invading and annexing its small southern neighbor based on dubious historical claims is somehow legitimate after all. Now Trump has cited Morocco's autonomy plan for the territory as serious, credible, and realistic, and the only basis of a just and lasting solution. Morocco's apologists, keep pushing this autonomy plan. But the Morocco's proposal falls way short of the international legal definition of autonomy, and in effect would simply continue the occupation. The Morocco's plan is vague as to the extent it would provide for genuine autonomy, which is particularly disturbing given how Morocco has broken quite a few promises regarding Western Sahara over the past 50 years. In addition, the record of autocratic states granting autonomy is not good. Remember what happened? Ethiopia's promised autonomy to Eritrea and Serbia granting autonomy to Kosovo. These autonomy agreements were rescinded and bloody wars ensued. More fundamentally, Morocco's autonomy proposal presupposes that Western Sahara is already legally part of Morocco. But as a UN recognized non-self-governing territory, the people of Western Sahara have the right to self-determination, which necessarily includes the option of independence. I mean, I don't personally care what the people of Western Sahara choose. They want to be incorporated into Morocco, that's fine. That would be highly unlikely in my view, but it is their choice. But they must have the option of independence. Until that time, Western Sahara is still legally a colony. And let's also recognize that for years, the Moroccan government, through generous housing subsidies, tax breaks, and other benefits, has successfully encouraged tens of thousands of Moroccan settlers to move into parts of the Western Sahara under their control. These are just as illegal as the Israeli settlements. And in fact, it's worse because the Moroccan settlers now outnumber the remaining Sahrawis indigenous to the territory by a ratio of more than 3 to 1. Unfortunately, Congress has passed a number of resolutions that make no distinction between Israel and its illegal settlements or between Morocco and Western Sahara. And this, Morocco, meanwhile, has been illegally exploiting the natural resources, particularly the phosphates and fisheries. And again, this is why it's important that some kind of BDS campaign, especially on the stolen properties, is good. Now, the Western Saharans have long been in solidarity with the Palestinians. Unfortunately, the Palestinian leadership has not returned the favor. The Fatah, most of the PLO, the Palestine Authority, supports Morocco on this. Hamas supports Morocco. They banned a Palestinian Western Sahara solidarity group in Gaza, just recently. But again, by linking the two struggles, You know, I mean, I think, frankly, a campaign, say at a university or a Christian denomination, others that's called for divesting from the 4 or 5 U.S. companies that are illegally supporting the settlements and the occupation. If we included the even smaller number of U.S. companies involved in Western Sahara, you know, that would not only be good for the Sahrawis, but also I think strengthen the BDS campaign with Palestine, because because we're talking about self-determination. We're talking about international law. We get past the arguments about, you know, about the nature of Zionism and why are you unfairly singling out Israel? We're not unfairly singling out Israel. We oppose all occupations, including Western Sahara, because Western Sahara and Palestine are the only 2 cases of an entire nation recognized by the UN as being non-self-governing territories, as being under foreign belligerent occupation, that are being denied their freedom, and where a majority of the people want to have freedom and they're not being allowed to. And that's why this is about more than just the Sahrawis and the Palestinians or the Syrians of the Golan. This is about the future of international law.
1 more minute.
The post-World War II international legal order. This is why it's so critical. So just let me finish by saying that the one positive side to Trump's recognition of Morocco's illegal annexation of Western Sahara is that finally people are realizing there are 2 major occupations in the Arab world. The Sahrawis, no less than the Palestinians, deserve their freedom. And given the critical role of the United States, France, and other countries have made in making Morocco's occupation possible, the mobilization of global civil society is critically important. Such activism in the 1990s played a key role in ending Indonesia's illegal occupation of East Timor. Similar efforts to effectively shame Morocco's backers in Washington, Paris, Madrid, and elsewhere to end their support for the occupation of Western Sahara may be the best hope for peace.
Thank you so much. That makes things very clear. I want now to have the panelists for at least a few minutes to ask each, if you ask anyone questions, to have a dialogue between yourselves for a few minutes, and you could ask each other questions, and then we could open that to the rest of us. And please feel free to ask anybody. You have to unmute yourself when you talk. Kamal, unmute yourself and ask question to any of the panelists.
Okay, yeah, okay. I mean, I have many questions, and I'm a big fan of Mr. Stephen Zunes' works, and I appreciate that I had this opportunity in here. But my question is, what would be the best way to make the President Biden's administration resigned that Trump's decision? Because it is clearly that it's a decision that will bring only destruction and will bring chaos to the whole international community if we let it go, because any powerful country now can just go and settle in a neighboring poorer and weaker country under the same mentality that former President Trump has instituted now.
Unmute yourself.
Again, I think East Timor is a really good model. I mean, there's a tiny group called ETAN, East Timor Action Network. There was a similar group based in the Christian churches in the United States that made East Timor a priority, and it was a pretty small movement, but it gained a lot of traction just because, like Western Sahara, it's so clear that, you know, it was, I mean, Morocco's, I mean, granted, the Palestinian situation is a little more complex, but you know, they deserve their freedom just as much, of course. But you know, it doesn't have as much. Western Sahara doesn't have the same kind of ideological baggage, and you know, a lot of other things that get caught up with. The Sahrawis, unlike unfortunately some Palestinian groups, have never engaged in terrorism. So they don't. There's not that mark against them. I think there's a lot of appeal to the Palestinian, to the Sahrawi cause. Indeed, some of the biggest backers of Israel are among the people in Congress who are speaking out on behalf of Western Sahara. And so I sort of the mirror image of the Palestinian leadership that supports the occupation of Western Sahara. So I think, I think we can build on it. There are some prominent Republicans that support Western Sahara, along with some prominent progressive Democrats. So we do have the basis there. I think it's a matter of making things a priority, because what's really sad is that even among people who are really conscientious about Palestine, about liberation struggles in the global South in general, haven't even heard of Western Sahara, or at least haven't till recently. And again, the fact that Western Sahara has actually gotten in the news a little bit in the past few months, it does provide an opening. So it's all about the grassroots organizing and pressing the issue, and making it and making a lot of noise. I mean, in the campaigns of Etan, there were people who were arrested in front of the Indonesian embassy and Indonesian consulates around the country. There was there are some very creative nonviolent actions. But even with small groups, if they're creative, they can get attention, they can get media coverage. So nonviolent direct action, lobbying, letter writing, letters to the editor, getting things in the press. I mean, there are a lot of the usual kind of things, because I've seen many campaigns in the United States start with one tiny, start with a small group, an obscure issue, and they have been able to make change.
Thank you. Any other question to other people? Okay, Salka.
Yes, thank you, shukran. Hello, Professor Stephen Zunes. Thank you for your information. I just have a question. I'm trying to comprehend. I know it can be interpreted in many different ways. What do you think about the current circumstances right now in the Western Sahara, as the Sahrawi people were forced to return to carry arms against the Moroccan occupation? Do you think that will be if the Biden administration and the international world ignoring the whole circumstance like it does not? There is nothing is going there like what the Moroccans are doing. Do you think it will escalate to something that it will be very difficult to control in the long run?
Again, legally speaking, the people of Western Sahara do have the right to take up arms. Again, strategically, I think it's a mistake. I mean, it could be, and one could argue that perhaps, I mean, even the Polisario themselves admit they cannot win militarily. There's not a clear path to military victory. I think at best they're hoping it's kind of a propaganda of the deed to get the world's attention, to pay attention. But actually, it's not. I mean, here we have the outbreak of a war. The Security Council didn't even address it, as they have outbreaks of similar wars. And especially when you have UN peacekeepers right there, you would think this would be a big priority. They don't. And in fact, Trump's recognition got a lot more attention than the resumption of the armed struggle. My concern also is that given the tendency in the West to see any armed struggle against a pro-Western Arab regime by definition as terrorism, even if there's no terrorism involved, I think that's particularly problematic. I mean, it's probably no coincidence that Trump announced a huge arms sale to Morocco that could be used in counterinsurgency war. The same day that he recognized Morocco's control of the entire territory. But I mean, I think that, but we've seen in South Africa where there is a, Nelson Mandela never renounced the armed struggle. There was a, low level, armed conflict by the armed wing of the ANC, though a number of ANC people I know who actually researched it said it actually probably did more harm than good. It didn't stop the civil resistance inside the townships and elsewhere. It didn't stop the international solidarity, which belatedly finally put sanctions on the apartheid regime. So again, I think the key thing. My goal is not to second guess the decision of the Polisario regime, the armed struggle. My goal as an American is to get my government to stop supporting Morocco, and that should be the goal of everybody in every country whose government is supporting Morocco.
Thank you so much. Well, I would like to invite everybody to join in an applause for everybody or the speaker. Please just shake your hand or say hi or thank you. And now we want to have questions and answer. And I like to start. Let me start with the young people who have question. Where's the young people? Anybody first? Let's go.
Sam Lynch.
Hi. Yes, I'll ask a question. So, hi, I'm Sam. I'm a current intern at Nonviolence International. And my question is, we've touched a bit about this already, but thinking about the importance of both solidarity and nonviolent action in these two movements against territorial occupation, do any of these panelists see the possibility for collaboration between Palestinians and Sahrawis in their respective struggles? And if so, how do you think these activists from both groups can communicate and collaborate with one another in the spirit of resisting occupation?
Mubarak, you are on mute.
Kamal, who want to answer that?
I can take a shot at that. I mean,
Kamal, and then ask that, and then Salka will do the also, please.
Yeah, because I mean, that's exactly what I wasn't thinking. I mean, I was also thinking about how Moroccan people who believe in that self-determination from the people of Morocco to support their sisters and brothers in the Sahrawi regions by engaging peaceful sit-ins in here, engaging some manifestations that I would appreciate it if the Palestinian people who are still believing in those values in the United States, at least, to be able to join in those sit-ins in front of the United Nations, in front of the White House, in a very peaceful way. I believe in nonviolence also when I believe that peaceful ways to reach out to the international community, to a local community, open discussions with the people, set flyers and give people flyers with a short timeline or chronology of what's happening in that region would help a lot. The three people, I would say, not only because as a Moroccan, I believe that the independence of the Western Sahara will bring also the independence of Morocco, because a lot of people, they look at us as an independent nation. But if I was given an opportunity to talk just for 60 minutes, I would prove that we are not independent as well. So that would be one thing that we should think about in the near future, is just those peaceful manifestations, protestations that are in front of those instances, like in the United Nations, in New York City, or the White House, or something else we can think of. That's what I can think of for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much, and thank you, Sam, for a great question. I do hope that in the future we'll have more collaboration between the Palestinians and the Sahrawis, and in the United States in particular, because we do have a lot of materials that we may work together on. But I am aware of some collaboration between Palestinians, grassroots activists in the occupied territory and in Gaza as well, with the civil society, and the solidarity never stops. The biggest, that what Professor Zunes mentioned earlier, we did have one group that was, declared as, solidarity with the Sahrawis from the West Bank, and it was completely disbanded by the Hamas or by the Palestinian government. But we have to always remind ourselves we are working as a civil society, and we will be facing so many challenges. One of the challenges is we are on the route to break, which is makes me happy, and I would like to tell you, and I think you already figured that out. For the first time in the civil movement, the nonviolent struggle for the Sahrawis, for the first time that there are Moroccans, human rights activists and defenders such as Kamal and Mohammed Hisham and many others that are openly working side by side with the Sahrawis. And for that matter, we did initiate, or we created an organization that has both Sahrawis and Moroccans, human rights activists and defenders for human rights, to work together for the common goal, which is the liberation of the Western Sahara, and also the people of Morocco to be liberated from the iron fist of the Alawite family or the Kingdom of Morocco. I think we are on the right path, and we are very hopeful because we have to break the cycle of this, the stereotype that Sahrawis and Moroccans are hating each other. We don't. We're all victims of a very similar circumstances, a very similar regime. We want to be free, so is the Moroccans. And we are, I think I went a little bit further, but I just want to make sure that this note is left with everyone, that we are doing something that we did not think that we can reach it. In particular, myself, I was very radical to even believe this is possible, but it is, and it's going to work, and it's making a difference already. It's making the Kingdom of Moroccan police and things like that going nuts thus far, and they want to know, and we are ready to do so. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Now we will move into question and answer period. If you would like to ask a question for the panelists, please raise your hand by clicking on the participant button of the page and finding the raise your hand button under the names. Otherwise, you may also write a question in the chat because we have an enormous number of people on the call. Please keep your question short so that we can hear as many voices as possible. I would like to extend a special invitation to young people and people who do not speak English. If they want to ask questions, we'll translate for them. Thank you.
Mubarak, we have a whole lot of, we're all young people, come on, but we have a whole waiting list. I believe that Siors had his hand up first, so we can maybe ask that. And then Art had posted a question right afterwards.
Okay, I'll ask my question. If you can hear me. I've been active in favor of Palestine, and I thought of the international delegation in the form of the Gaza flotilla. Now I wonder, with the military outbreak in the south of Western Sahara, that maybe it would be beneficial for international attention to have an international delegation from Europe to either the occupied part of Western Sahara / Morocco, or to maybe better to the liberated part or the refugee camps in the southwest of Western Sahara. People from Spain, Belgium, Netherlands, all over could just come, maybe gather in Barcelona, because there is in mid-October there is a conference of the International Peace Bureau from Berlin that is organized in Barcelona. And we could ask people from, especially Spain, like, this is your former colony. Do you know what the mess is? Would you like to see for yourself what's going on? Please, journalists, politicians, be invited. So how would you react to such an initiative? Thank you.
Jonathan, can you respond to that?
Yes, I think that international delegations are one of the most useful elements because of their high educational value, because most human rights violations occur in the dark. So the oppressors are really worried when they have internationals and journalists coming on a fact-finding mission, as well as a solidarity mission. That usually really upsets the oppressors and the occupiers and the annexers and the human rights violations. So absolutely, I think that's a wonderful idea, and I would pursue it, definitely.
Can I please add that there was an international delegation from Norway, mainly young people, students from universities in Norway, and they were just sent back. So I wonder whether maybe it would be better to have those Europeans visit the refugee camps in Algeria.
Well, both are important, and we have to expect that these delegations may have to come in surreptitiously. Maybe they have to make several attempts. Maybe they have to make the fact that they were turned back an event and an educational event to bring pressure on the regime. What is it that you have to hide? Why aren't you allowing them to come? And then you get more and more prominent people trying to come and be turned back. And then it becomes a very difficult campaign where the Moroccan regime is constantly trying to prohibit foreigners from coming in. It's not a very comfortable position for them. But definitely, there has to be attempts both inside and outside, and these fact-finding missions are a clear tool that we can use.
Thank you.
I want to underscore that indeed, there have been quite a few cases of people being turned down, but they've all been used to the advantage of the cause. Again, for the very reasons that Mubarak mentioned. What I should emphasize is that the situation, well, Morocco itself is liberalized somewhat over the years. Western Sahara itself is a very, very oppressive situation. I've been to 85 countries, including Iraq under Saddam and Indonesia under Suharto, and I've never seen a worse police state than Moroccan-occupied Western Sahara. A Freedom House in their Freedom in the World thing report, the annual thing that came out just a week and a half ago, they put Western Sahara along with like North Korea and Tajikistan, just Tibet, as like the half dozen worst countries in the world in terms of the lack of civil and political rights. And so, this fact alone, I think, is something that we need to emphasize and demonstrate, by either sneaking people in, or again by having delegations that are turned around and using that to underscore the level of repression.
Thank you.
We have a long waiting list, Mubarak. I would suggest when we have questions in the chat as well, but I suggest we go Art, Eileen, Saeed, and Lisa. And I hope we can keep the questions concise and the answers also to give everybody a chance.
Okay.
Hey, everyone.
So Art, well, I'm sorry. Art, are you still on?
Okay.
If Art's not on, let's move to Eileen.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, Art, go ahead.
Yes, I had a question in the chat, if you can see it. Okay. I was just wondering about the amount of money that the United States government is giving to Morocco to continue this criminal occupation of Western Sahara, and also to note the parallels too between the Israeli occupying not only the Palestinian lands but also the Bedouin lands, and how that was an extension of the United States occupying of native lands here in the United States. It's the continuation of occupation and the ruthless oppression that is at the origins of the United States empire. right? So anyway, I think the point of about a nonviolent campaign here in the U.S., similar to ETAN and other solidarity groups ending U.S.-backed Israeli occupation in Palestine, if we can hook into those groups, that would be a great thing. I was part of a number of nonviolent resistance actions at the Israeli embassy and also at the Indonesian embassy. And it generated a lot of public attention. But I don't think a lot of people know about what the level of U.S. military aid is to Morocco to continue this occupation. So,
thank you, Art. So actually,
thank you all so much.
Thank you. I'll ask the panelists to think about the numbers if they have an answer. But let's go to Eileen real quick and see if she's got a similar question or something completely different.
Hi, I'm Eileen from Sweden. I have a different question, but I'll keep it short. So the Swedish government back in 2014 recognized the state of Palestine and was expected to do the same with Western Sahara, but changed their mind, many believe due to pressure from Morocco. But it's also, there's very strong pro-Palestine opinions in the public. So my question was how you could utilize this strong support, both the government and among the public, to raise awareness about Western Sahara and also about the improve the situation there.
Jonathan, is that something you'd like to address?
I think that Nonviolence International has acted in many ways as a resource center for people throughout the world because many of the tactics are the same. We need education, we need information, we need intervention, we need activism in the form of calling for boycotts or calling for sanctions or calling for divestment. In Western Sahara, the economic situation is very much part of the reason for the annexation. So we need better information about corporations that benefit from the resources of the Western Sahara so that we can target them more specifically.
If I may just add one suggestion, that what I believe in, I think, thank you, the lady from, I think it's Lynn from Sweden, thank you very much. And thank you to the people of Sweden for solidarity with the Sahrawis for many, many years. I am very aware of that. I think the problem that we have is I am not sure what Morocco has against so many countries in Europe, in the Arab world, in Africa, and everywhere. Every time there is a step forward to recognize the pain and the suffering of the Sahrawis, the other country that back up, or back off rather, very mysteriously. I'm not sure what does Morocco have or does not have in order for those great countries like Sweden, before the United States itself, many other countries in the world, that they tend to change their mind after a certain time of the pressure, or some with Morocco. But I think that the best thing should be led by, for example, in the Arab world, is the Palestinians should hold their own government accountable to see why is Palestinian people are accepting the double standard of the Kingdom of Morocco. They are pro the Israelis, they are pro the settlement. In fact, they do send trainers, etc., to Morocco and back and forth. And yet we are pro the Palestinians, and the leader of the Jerusalem of the Arab world, etc. I think the Palestinian or the civil society must question their own government, because there is something does not make any sense. where the Moroccan government openly are pro the Israelis, pro the human rights abuse, and they actually have very similar practice that they do against the Palestinians and against the Sahrawis. Very similar. It's literally a copycat, or perhaps they're both trained in the same manner. So this is what I think will make any noise. Other than that, I think only the people will force their governments in Europe and everywhere else to hold their government accountable for their work or their assisting Morocco to prolong the occupation of the Sahrawis and to have them some in refugee camps like myself. I grew up in refugee camps and I was born in Lyon. I went in 2018 for the first time. I was under surveillance all the time after 43 years of exile. And I think that's not right, and we should change the manner, change the concept, change to reach to other governments for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well,
I want to respond to Mr. Art Lafine, because the United States actually doesn't give money to the Moroccan to do this. I would say it's in the opposite way. The Moroccan regime has been using corruption to buy out voices outside Morocco to stand and to speak up and to support or whatever, to back this illegal and unlawful legitimacy of the Moroccan sovereignty. You have to understand that actually Moroccan people live under the line of poverty. I would tell you about 70% of the Moroccan people live under the line of poverty because this regime is spending the money that is supposed to be building hospitals and schools and infrastructure and providing and supporting human development. Because we are ranking among the last third of the world, though we are a country that has enough resources to be living in a better situation. So I would say it's the opposite, is that the Moroccan regime spends the money of the people to buy voices and to buy support outside. I don't think United States is giving any money to, because the only one who beneficiates from the status quo situation in the Western Sahara is the Moroccan regime, because they are like, I think Mr. Stephen Zunes said that actually they are stealing phosphates, they are stealing fishery, and this is all beneficiate the regime and the allies of the regime. They're getting richer while the Sahrawi people are being undermined and while the Moroccan people are being impoverished. And I thank you, and I apologize because I had to clarify that with Mr. Art. Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we go next to Saeed, who had a question? And then Lisa.
Yes, thank you. I have one question about Trump decision in Western Sahara. If the Biden administration does not cancel the Trump decision in Western Sahara, can the decision be overturned through the United States judiciary? Thank you.
Stephen, would you like, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mubarak.
Well, sorry, I was planning to put it on Zunes' shoulder to answer.
Okay. I don't believe so. It's the president has a fair amount of prerogative in this regard. There's some debate, about the foreign way he did it. I mean, but I think really the easiest way is just to get to try to convince Biden to rescind it. I know that it was not within the State Department. It was not very popular because even more very mainstream State Department types who generally support the overall thrust of U.S. foreign policy, at least know enough about international law to realize that it's a problem. There is some quiet pressure on Biden to shift unfortunately, because Trump linked it to Morocco's recognition of Israel. Biden is getting a lot of pressure from those who support normalization of relations between predominantly Arab states and Israel prior to resolving the Palestinian question. That he knows if he rescinds the recognition of Morocco's annexation, Morocco then will rescind its recognition of Israel, and therefore he'll be targeted by both Republicans and a lot of and certain right-wing Democrats about how he was destroying this chance for peace and that kind of thing. So there's I think it's more of a political question than a legal question right now, and again, that's why I think those of the United States really have an obligation to put on the pressure.
Thank you for that. We have a question from Lisa. Would you like to say it yourself, or would you like me to just read it? Lisa.
Hi, I'm here. So thanks to everyone. It's great to have these two causes connected. Wondering, I've heard several of you mention potential for divestment or boycott, and wondered if there is a list of companies that currently are doing harm to the Sahrawi people and their land and their resources that we could target, or how do we find out what companies are operating there?
If I can respond. Hello, Lisa.
Hi,
Lisa. Thank you. There are many companies, including one that I have seen myself, and I've been trying to, with other Sahrawis in the diaspora, to fight, is McDonald's. So McDonald's is the biggest occupier with the Moroccans inside the Western Sahara. The McDonald's company, they respond to a lot of Sahrawis questions, like from human rights and from the Sahrawis everywhere. The first response was that they said they are creating jobs for the Sahrawis under the occupation in Layun in particular. But you have to keep in mind, like Mr. Zunes mentioned earlier, the Sahrawis are becoming the minority in their own homeland, which is the plan. It's the plan to drag the process along as much as the Kingdom of Morocco can do that, or the regime, as others call them the correct one. The more time they occupy the Western Sahara, the more chances that the Sahrawis will be the minority in their own homeland. Keep in mind, and in fact, it's almost 99.9 workers who work in this McDonald's in the Western Sahara in Layun are Moroccans, are settlers. They are settlers and Moroccans nationals. None of them Sahrawis at all. I went to that place, I investigated myself, I got all the facts. So no one, no company there, they are for the Sahrawis. In fact, maybe that's the misinformation that was given from the Moroccan government to sign all the contracts. There are lists of other companies. We have to double check the latest status after the war broke in the Western Sahara. I will be happy to pass it along if I get the updates, or probably send it to the Nonviolence International to send it to everyone else. But yes, there are very similar also companies similar to the one are supporting the occupation of the Palestinian people land. It's very similar, and we can have cross-check almost every one of them. Thank you.
Mubarak, I think you're on mute. Sorry.
If you have a list, you send it to us. We send it to everybody who is on this Zoom.
Mubarak, I believe we're really just about out of time. It's unfortunate, but these are great questions and great speakers. Would you like to wrap up?
Yes. I'm sorry that we couldn't get all the question answered, but whatever we answered have been very informative. And I hope the occupations balloon will burst and occupation will fall, and that's what's our interest in. Sometimes just the idea of individual personal feeling with others is important, that we care for each other, we care that people should be free, we care justice for justice, that's important. And we want the Palestinian and the Sahrawi to support each other. And we don't care what our government or the Sahrawi's government or the Moroccan government or any government think. When people work together, it's more powerful than governments work together. And government work for their own interests, but we as people will see the interest of every individual. That becomes an important part of us. The international community must stand against all occupation and annexation. It have nothing to do with the Sahrawis or with the Palestinians. They have to be against Crimea, against Cyprus, against the Golan Heights, against Tibet, also against the Palestinian and Western Sahara. We have to be very much active in saying occupation is wrong, that you cannot put people to be slaves again, that people are equal everywhere in the world and the human rights of everyone is considered, and any rights of any person, any place in the world is being deprived. That means everybody is being deprived, especially women. In all areas of equality, we have to do that. And I want to thank you all for your participation. And I'll have Rafif conclude this discussion.
Thank you, Mubarak. That's a sobering yet inspiring way to end the discussion. Just before we all drop off, I do want to remind you that the webinar will be posted on Nonviolence International's YouTube channel this Friday. Please do follow us on Twitter and Facebook and spread the word. We'll continue the series. And I think if everybody gives a round of applause once again to both our phenomenal speakers, but our host, Mubarak, and all of the those who made the time to join. Brilliant webinar today. Thank you so much.